Okay, let's dive right into this incredibly fascinating explainer about an ancient, self-sustaining community living entirely on water. We constantly hear about how fast the modern world is changing, right? How global supply chains are incredibly fragile, and how quickly local traditions are just getting wiped out. But today, we're going to look at a breathtaking exception to literally all of those rules.
So I want you to imagine a bustling commercial hub, one that has operated seamlessly for centuries, completely untouched by the rise and fall of the political world around it. No central banking system, no corporate oversight, no modern governing body at all. It sounds impossible, right? I mean, how does a major regional supply chain just manage itself through hundreds of years of history? Well, the answer is the daily 5 a.m. floating vegetable market on Dal Lake in Kashmir. Before the sun even comes up, while the rest of the world is dead asleep, this intricate, almost magical dance of wooden boats, they're called shikaras, gathers on the water to trade fresh produce. It's a staggering visual, absolutely, but the real story is the invisible machinery that makes this 600-year-old anomaly work, day after day after day. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, Dal Lake is a massive 1620-hectare water body right in the heart of Srinagar. Causeways divide the lake into distinct basins, primarily Loku Dal and Bu Dal, and this isn't just some scenic backdrop for tourists. This vast network of open water, marshlands, and floating gardens is the literal lifeblood for a unique indigenous community that has built their entire existence on its surface.
Section 1. Who are the Hanjis, the original lake dwellers?
You really can't understand the floating market without understanding the people behind it. These Aboriginal inhabitants have literally mastered the art of living on water since ancient times, drawing absolutely everything they need for survival straight from the lake. Historical texts, like Pandit Kalhana's Raja Tarangani, actually trace their roots all the way back to 826 BC. They are sometimes called Jalbashi, which translates to water dwellers, and for very good reason. They have this inherent, almost genetic understanding of the lake's depths, its moods, and its mysteries.
175,000. That is the staggering estimated current population of the Hanji community living in and around the lake today. To put that into perspective, that's essentially the population of a moderately sized city, all operating within the highly fragile ecosystem of a single Himalayan lake.
And we're seeing some dramatic population growth here. Back in 1980, the population was roughly 70,000. Today, it has ballooned to that 175,000 mark. That kind of rapid expansion puts an immense amount of pressure on a closed environmental system. More people means more housing, whether we're talking temporary huts on the marshlands or permanent structures, and significantly more stress on the lake's natural resources.
And beneath their rich ancient culture lies a pretty harsh demographic reality. With a massive 66% of the population classified as dependents, you have this tiny 34% active workforce left to support the entire community. The literacy rates are also a pretty stark reality check. They hover around just 12 to 24% overall, and female literacy drops to a deeply concerning 3.7%. On top of that, the sex ratio sits at 892 females per 1,000 males, well below the national average, which really reflects a traditionally underdeveloped patriarchal structure where males are historically prioritized.
Section 2. An ecosystem of subcastes. Division of labor on the water. So how do 175,000 people organize themselves without total chaos? They do it through a highly complex, water-centric ecosystem of subcastes. Here, your occupation literally defines your community role and your economic standing. Down at the base, you have the god hands, the fishermen, who historically represent the poorest section. Moving up, you've got the gari hands, gathering water nuts and lotus stems. Then on the service side, the Danga and Shikara hands operate passenger boats. And finally, sitting at the highest economic tier are the houseboat hands, who run those famous, highly luxurious cedar houseboats for the tourists. But for our explainer today, the absolute heroes of the story are the Dem hands. These are the vegetable growers. They ingeniously cultivate floating gardens right on top of the water surface. They are the true engine of the 5 a.m. market, harvesting their produce in pitch blackness so they can paddle out and trade right at the crack of dawn. Section 3. Surviving empires in conflict. 6 centuries of resilience.
Honestly, it is a borderline miracle this market still exists. We generally think of commercial centers as being super vulnerable to political instability, right? But the Dal Lake market completely defies that logic. Spanning over 600 years, this timeline proves that no matter who ruled the land, the waters of the Dal Lake and its market remained stubbornly resilient. Established way back in the 14th century during the Kashmir Sultanate, it survived the arrival of the mighty Mughals in 1586. The Mughals built their famous opulent gardens right on the shoreline, yet they left the Hanji's trade ecosystem entirely untouched. It survived Afghan rule, the Sikh annexation in 1819, and incredibly, even the massive, tragic displacements of the 1947 partition. The market practically reopened within days of the upheaval.
Even colonial British officers, who, as we know, were completely obsessed with administration and taxation, were totally baffled by how smoothly this wholesale market operated autonomously. They actually documented this in their 19th century gazetteers, just marveling at how hundreds of boats could converge in the dark, trade literal tons of produce, and then disperse as the sun rose, all without a single governing body directing the traffic or setting a single price.
And that resilience continued into the modern era. Even during times of severe geopolitical turmoil, when tourism totally collapsed, specifically during the armed insurgency and intense curfews of the 1990s, the Hanjis kept paddling out at 5 a.m. While the solid streets of Srinagar were locked down tight, the water highways of Dal Lake remained wide open, quietly supplying the city with essential food. So the absolutely crucial point you should take away from all this is that this market isn't some tourist trap put on for cameras. It's the very soul of the Hanja people. The buying and selling of lotus stems, turnips, and collard greens, that's just the surface layer. Beneath that, it is a daily reaffirmation of exactly who they are and their ancient bond with this lake. Section 4, Visiting the Floating Market, Experiencing the 600-year-old Tradition. Now, if you ever have the privilege of visiting Srinagar, experiencing this is an absolute must-do, but it does require a bit of planning. Because it is a functional, real-world wholesale market, you absolutely must be on the water in the pre-dawn darkness to catch the action before it vanishes. This means waking up super early and coordinating with your shikara operator the night before. Once the sun is fully up, the wholesale trading is mostly done, and you'll really only find a few souvenir boats lingering around. And timing your visit matters too. Whether you choose the fresh blooms of spring or the copper skies of autumn, both seasons offer visually staggering yet completely different experiences. In the spring, you have crisp air, the famous local hawk greens being traded, and you can pair your morning with the blooming of the nearby tulip garden. But if you go in the autumn, the clear skies and the reflection of the copper shinar trees on the glassy water create this incredibly dramatic, moody palette. Now, if you do go, you need to be a responsible traveler. First off, dress warmly. The lake is freezing before dawn, even in summer. But most importantly, respect the traders. Absolutely do not use your camera flash. It literally blinds the boatmen and disrupts their fast-paced transactions in the dark. Always ask with a friendly nod before photographing people up close, and just remember, you are a guest observing their livelihood. Support them by buying a little something for sure, but don't interfere with the big wholesale exchanges. Yet despite surviving empires, partitions, and wars, the modern era brings profound ecological challenges that threaten to disrupt this delicate balance. Remember that staggering population growth we looked at earlier? Well, the untreated liquid and solid waste from the hamlets is severely polluting the lake today. Furthermore, the tendency to dump mud and weeds to convert floating gardens into solid land masses is actively narrowing the waterways and shrinking the clear water expanse. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly pressing thought. Can a self-regulating society that survived centuries of empires survive the ecological impacts of the 21st century? Will the waters of Dal Lake continue to sustain the Hanji, or will modern pressures finally be the thing that breaks the 600-year-old tradition? It's a very complex reality, and the choices made today will undoubtedly shape the future of this incredible floating world. Thanks for exploring this amazing topic with me today, and I really hope it gave you a fresh perspective on what resilience and tradition truly look like.
Look at these two images. On the left is the brochure version of Dal Lake, saturated, bright, and curated. On the right is the reality, blue-hour light, thick wool coats, and local traders moving bulk produce before most tourists leave their beds. This is a working wholesale exchange. These boatmen aren't performing for a crowd. They're participating in a daily routine that dates back at least 6 centuries to the Kashmir Sultanate. This market outlasted the arrival of the Mughals, Afghan rule, the 1947 partition, and the strict curfews of the 1990s. Emperors and governments changed on the shore, but the aquatic supply chain never stopped moving. The architects of this system are the Hanji, Kashmir's indigenous lake dwellers who built this floating economy because water was their only resource. So here is the trade-off you have to consider. Is it actually worth waking up at 4:30 a.m. to navigate freezing, dark water just to watch a vegetable exchange? To decide if the trip is for you, accept that you are a spectator watching a pragmatic local supply chain move its goods. You are watching a business transaction, not a show. The farmer's schedule creates a timing mismatch for visitors. Peak trading happens in the blue hour, 45 minutes before sunrise. Arriving at sunrise gives better light, but the exchange is over. You'll photograph empty boats instead of the actual market. Then there are the seasonal trade-offs. Consider a winter visit between December and February. You get a raw look at the lake. Thick mist covers the water, crowds disappear, and the market feels exactly as it might have centuries ago. However, you sit in an open boat in temperatures down to -3 degrees Celsius, sometimes pushing through ice on the lake's edges to reach the trading point. Summer or monsoon visits offer peak produce and green aquatic blooms, but they require the earliest wake-up calls. You have to be on the water by 4:45 a.m. and be ready for rain. Optimizing for your physical comfort means missing the core activity. Optimizing for the real market means accepting significant physical discomfort. These dots are the Hanji Mahalas. This map shows how the community is distributed across the lake's municipal wards, living in a world connected by water rather than land. This population is growing rapidly within a very small area. Between 1980 and 2011, the number of Hanjis living on or around the lake jumped from 70,000 to nearly 175,000. This growth puts severe stress on the lake. Literacy rates in the community are estimated between 12 and 24%, leaving most families entirely dependent on the shrinking water ecosystem for their survival. The community is organized by trade. There are the houseboat Hanjis who work in tourism, the Gad Hanjis who are fishermen, and the Dem Hanjis. The Dem Hanjis are the growers. They manage the floating gardens and bring their vegetables to the pre-dawn wholesale exchange. These growers have a narrow pre-dawn window to move their harvest. When tourist boats crowd the channels for photos, they directly interfere with their business. Acknowledging these caste roles and the community's vulnerability changes how you move through the water. It highlights why navigating this space requires a level of restraint and respect. The Dal Lake floating market functions as a raw agricultural supply chain. It is a working environment rather than a curated performance. To help you decide if it's worth the trip, we've mapped out 3 distinct traveler profiles. If you are a dedicated photographer, this is a go. Aim for the clear mornings of April through June or September through October for the best visibility. You need to book your boat the night before and bring fast lenses for the low light. Most importantly, arrive 45 minutes before sunrise and do not use a flash. If you are a cultural observer, this is also a go. Your goal is to stay out of the active trading lanes. Watch the Dempons using ancient techniques to manage their gardens, and if you buy anything, do so modestly to support the local economy. If you are a casual vacationer who dislikes early mornings and cold water, you should skip the market. Instead, book a late morning boat ride through the lotus fields and the hamlets. You will see the infrastructure of the lake and the local houseboats without the logistical stress of the dawn trading hours. The true value here is watching an unbroken 600-year-old human ecosystem continue its work, largely indifferent to the world outside the lake.